Goals for this module. Explain the purpose of acceptable use policies, AUP. Comply with the AUP for your school or workplace. An AUP is a written document that defines what you are allowed and not allowed to do on a school or workplace network. It includes the rules for how to use various data and information technology resources that are made available to you as a student or employee of the organization. Key here is that the document is a written document. You may be asked to sign a statement that you've read and understood that the AUP document. Typically, it's provided to you when you enroll in the school or are hired by an employer prior to starting work. Again, it must be written, and typically you'll sign off on it to show that you've read and understood the document and agree to abide by that document. An AUP contains rules and regulations an institution or organization has formulated concerning internet use, privacy rules, network security procedures, user account security, allowed email use, proper data storage, keeping data confidential, and how to report network misuse. Many AUPs contain specific rules outlining how to store and use confidential data. Confidential data includes the most personally identifying data, data such as name, address, social security numbers, phone numbers, health information, and so on. AUPs also govern how employees use company and trade secrets, which they are also responsible for keeping confidential. You might have to sign a non-disclosure agreement saying won't disclose company data to outside third parties, for example. Many AUPs require users to store sensitive or confidential data on designated secure file servers. These might be behind a network. They might be certainly behind a secure network or behind another firewall. They might be on a, somehow more stringently regulated than typical file servers that carry non-secure, less sensitive information, or there may be designated cloud storage for those secure types of things, that secure data that requires it to be kept confidential. Typically, encryption may be used of various levels of encryption to ensure only authorized people can access the information, and it's encrypted so that in the event of a data breach, the data is inaccessible to unauthorized people. So these are typical things that happen to protect confidential data. Finally, many AUPs have a stringent requirement prohibiting the storage of confidential information on local hard drives, that is on, say, the user's laptops or desktop computers or other devices, and certainly not on flash drives or other portable USB drives. Again, because if those devices are somewhat compromised or fall into wrong hands, the data could in fact be compromised. So it's very likely that many corporate AUPs particularly will have this restriction, these types of restrictions in place. So keep that in mind when storing confidential data. Follow your AUP's procedures. There are consequences for not complying with your school or workplace's AUP, and some of them can be pretty severe. At the very least, you could lose your privileges to use the resources that you need to do your work. You may not be allowed to use the internet or lose access to email and other privileges. Worse yet, there could be disciplinary action of one kind or another of varying levels of severity. Uh, it's not uncommon in extreme cases for people to be terminated from their jobs or have their education terminated. So the consequences of not complying with an AUP are very severe. So make sure you comply fully with your institution's AUP. If you have any questions, talk to someone in your IT department or your administration to make sure you're clear on what's expected of you. In this module, you learned what an AUP is and why it's important, what an AUP contains, why you must comply with your school or workplace AUP, and the consequences for not complying with your institution's AUP.